Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 34 of the BadMotoGP-Show. And it's been a long time. I was busy over the weekend. I watched the MotoGP race in a train and made some memes on my way to the lake. But it was fun. And yeah, since I was busy over the weekend, we only managed to record the podcast now. It's now Tuesday evening, and tomorrow I'm going back on the road. So it's a little bit busy for me. So yeah, did you enjoy the race weekend, Keelan? Hello.
Hello again, Leo. Yes, I did. Mugello's just magnificent, isn't it? Beautiful Tuscany in Italy. Yeah, good fun. I enjoyed it a lot. The MotoGP race itself, we'll get into it, of course. It got a tad predictable, but aside from that, great weekend. Really good weekend as always. Lots going on, and looking forward to breaking it down and getting into it. I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions on a lot of things.
Yeah, and we had a little bit of an argument over text yesterday, I believe, because I didn't think the race was boring at all. I thought it was very entertaining. I mean, yes, the lead wasn't necessarily contested, but there was a stretch at the beginning of the race where you thought, okay, maybe Jorge Martin can close the gap to Pecco. So this was kind of interesting. And I have to give a shout out to Dorna for once because the camera crew did a very, very good job of showing the action of the race. I mean, they could have just shown Pecco and Jorge Martin the entire time, but they showed this amazing battle for P3. Then they showed a little bit of Fabio and what was happening further down the grid. And I really enjoyed it because they made a fantastic job of extracting the action that happened and not focusing too much on the leaders who weren't battling at all. So I thought they did a very good job. I enjoyed it a lot, and yeah, I mean the battle for P3 was just magnificent. We had this crazy incident in turn one where Alex Marquez kind of braked between Luca Marini on was it Luca Marini? I don't
Yeah.
know. It was Luca Marini, Jack Miller, and Mark Marquez in front of him, and Alex Marquez overtook everybody, but he ran a little bit wide, and then in this span of this one corner, Luca Marini was last, and then Jack Miller and Alex Marquez were having a little argument. Um, and Mark Marquez was looking over, and then Luca Marini sneaked back through. So this was very, very entertaining. And Joan Zarco came back. He did an incredible job coming back from like P11 or P12 where he was in the first lap. I can't remember. And Alex Marquez did a good job until he didn't. And same with Mark Marquez. And Mark provided us with like the golden meme template. And yeah, I'm actually very, very satisfied with the Mugello race. Yes, it would have been better if there was a battle at the front, but the way it was portrayed on television was very, very entertaining, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest winners of this weekend were actually Dorna for once. Bet you never thought you'd hear us say that this season, but yes, they actually took a dub this weekend and they deserve a lot of credit for it because it's something that we've criticized them a lot for this season and last season as well. And I think what they finally realized was when the leader of the race checks out, it's obvious who's going to win. Let's actually throw the camera backwards and let's see what's going on in other parts of the track, and it was a much better viewing experience. I have to agree with you on that. I know we did have an argument about whether the race was entertaining or not. I kind of took too narrow of a view of it in terms of just looking at there being no battle at the front, but I think if I'd have taken into account the actual third place battle, then I would have agreed with Leo. So I do think you were right on that. But yeah, the camera work was phenomenal from Dorna. It was much better seeing the third place battle, seeing Zarco's work as well. Working his way up the grid to get third place out of nowhere, which was phenomenal. And yeah, all around just excellent work from them. The Marquez brothers once again doing what Marquez does. Mark crashes out, provides us with arguably the greatest meme template we've ever had. Alex Marquez follows suit soon after him, binning the Ducati. And yeah, overall, really, really entertaining race. Not back to front because the front was obviously boring with Paco doing Jorge Lorenzo things, but every other part of the track was really, really good fun to watch. I have to say, it was very, very entertaining.
Yeah. And when we go back to Le Mans, there was this incredible chaotic start of the race because I believe Jack Miller was leading, and we had a little bit of the scenario again because Jack Miller was leading into the first corner, and then he was quickly overtaken by Pecco and Jorge Martin. But then he was kind of in this position of slowing everybody behind him down in P3, which allowed this battle for P3 to really come to fruition. And this goes back to my suggestion after Le Mans that we should have somebody who isn't as fast as Pecco, for example, be at the front and make the grid go a little bit slower, so it's a lot more chaotic. But yeah, in all seriousness, Pecco, obviously, he was better than everybody else, faster than everybody else. He was in a league of his own. Fun fact, he drove more or less the exact same time as Fabio did in 2021 when he won the race. So the
Wow.
overall race duration was nearly the same. And obviously, conditions are different, yada, yada, yada. But this shows you that Yamaha is indeed developing backwards, which is rather funny.
Oh, God.
And yeah, Jorge Martin did a very good job. I don't think we need to talk about this, but um, I want to point out Joan Zarco because he did everything right in this race. And he's once again in this weird spot where he had a bad start, so it's not enough for a race victory. But then at the end, he comes into his own and really makes up for his bad start. But at the end, it wasn't enough again. But yeah, it was very, very good what he did. And also Luca Marini, I felt really for Luca Marini because he had this horrible injury in Le Mans and made it back for Mugello. And you could see him fighting against Alex Marquez, against Mark Marquez, against Joan Zarco. And he really wanted to secure the podium. And unfortunately, it didn't pay off, but this kind of got me rolling during the race. So very, very good and solid battle for P3.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually going to throw a comparison out there that might actually suit Johan Zarco very well because watching the race, this is what came to my mind. I actually think Johan Zarco is like the Nate Diaz of the grid. And the reason I say that, not because he ends up bloodied and looking like a punch bag, because obviously he doesn't. He's a beautiful, beautiful man, as Johan Zarco.
And he's a little bit more eloquent.
And he's a little bit more eloquent, of course. Yeah, a bit more sophisticated, I think it's fair to say. But no, I think where the comparison comes in with Johan Zarco is that he always starts every race terribly, but he gets so much better the longer the race goes on. And if the race lasted an extra 5 laps, he'd probably win every race. So yeah, I think Johan Zarco had a very good weekend. Looked stable, looked reliable as he always does, and had a great race to boot. As far
some
as
some
looking,
people would say it was too stable.
I know, but yeah,
Or the customer teams were getting too fast.
yeah, it's too much. It's too much.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. Now, please finish.
No, it was funny. It was worth interrupting. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Luca Marini had a great race as well. He was very solid. He was always in the mix. Never looked like he was out of it. Had some very good overtakes on Marquez, Alex and Mark, and on the other riders in that battle as well. So yeah, I mean, if you're Ducati, a bit like the story of your season, you're very happy coming out of Mugello for the most part. Every rider looked really good. Even Enea Bastianini, who is coming off a major injury, had a good race as well, notwithstanding. But yeah, all around great weekend for Ducati. Nothing bad to say about any of the riders. Thought they all looked really good.
Yeah. And regarding Jean Zarco, there are a lot of speculations about him potentially retiring or leaving Pramac whatsoever if he isn't on the MotoGP grid next year. And My best bet is that he will be because he's very, very valuable for Ducati. But if he wasn't, then he should go to endurance racing and win everything there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, go to the
Uh,
24-hour championship, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, what was interesting, I found this out today because watching the race, I had a little bit of a suspicion, but I didn't bother to check. And today I checked. Ducati developed a new fairing, and during the race, I spotted it on Michele Piro's bike, which is more like the ground effect fairing of Aprilia or KTM a little bit. But KTM still has these F ducts at the side, and obviously Pecco has the F ducts on his bike, and Enea Bastianini does too. So what Ducati did is they put a different fairing on the Pramac bikes and on Michele Piro's bike, but still didn't bother to check with Pecco there because Pecco has a bike which works for him, and this is basically what he wanted, and this sums up the whole conversation with data we had about Yamaha because Yamaha can't afford to do these things. And what Ducati is doing there is very, very, very interesting and genius. They're supplying Pramac with factory bikes, but then putting updates on them during a live race weekend where they feel like, okay, this could be something, and then getting data, very, very comparable data from Pecco and Enea with the old factory bike, and from Michele Piro, Jorge Martin, and from Joan Zarco with the new factory bike. And therefore, they have this incredible amount of data and can develop the bike much, much better than, for example, Yamaha can. So this, yeah, I recognized this and wanted to discuss this because what Ducati is doing is absolutely genius.
Yeah, it is. Do the VR46 bikes have the new fairing?
No, they are running the 22 bikes.
Oh yeah, they have
So
the 22,
they
of
still have
course.
the old bikes, and as far as I'm concerned, nothing changed on those bikes yet.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, you make a brilliant point. This is the genius of the strategy of Ducati. They're using their armada of what they have, and what they have is not only are they getting a much bigger sample size, but they're getting such comparable data that they know it's accurate and they know it's going to work for what they're trying to do. So, like you said, for example, if you put say you have bikes A through F, just letters A, B, C, D, E, and F, and you put new fairings on A, C, and E, and you compare it against bikes B, D, and F by the end of the weekend, you can directly cross match things that are relevant and things that aren't, and things that are going to work and things that aren't. It's a very, very smart tactic from Ducati, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. This is why they're staying one step ahead of the game because they have so much data that they've basically covered all their bases and pretty much anything they try and do. So props to Ducati. They're very, very smart people.
Yeah, Honda does basically the same. They have also the DNF and DNS bikes.
Well played. Well played.
Yeah. Um, No, but back to Ducati. I mean, this is what we've been talking all the time with Yamaha that they need to get a satellite team, and this shows why. And also because of setup. I mean, when you have 8 bikes on a grid, you can, or 9 bikes in the case of Ducati at Mugello, you can work so much better with the setup because if somebody discovers it, everybody else is trying it out immediately. And that's why Ducati is so fast, and that's why they're ahead of everybody. I mean, KTM is still a long way back, and it looks like KTM may be the second best bike on the grid now.
Yeah, exactly. But what KTM are doing is not only are they working very hard to evolve the bike, they're using the number of bikes they have very smartly. They're using the data that the riders are giving them and they're cross matching what they can to try and extract the most out of the package. The problem with Yamaha, I mean, there's too many to mention in a short opinion piece, but one of the biggest issues they have that we have said from the beginning of this season is the lack of a satellite team. You know, not only they don't just serve the purpose of having more bikes on the grid, they give you more data to solve the problems that you're currently facing. And the problem with Yamaha now is that they're so far behind with not having a satellite team that you're expecting Fabio to not only be your A rider but now to try and be a test rider as well as trying to focus on winning. And it's too much to expect him to do. And no offense, I mean, I'm a huge Frankie Morbidelli fan. I think we both are. But you're asking him to try and do the same thing as well. And it's an impossible ask. These guys can't test ride and race ride as well. It's just too much to expect of them. So really, with Yamaha have basically just got to get through this season and make it try and look respectable. Go to the off season and get a satellite team in. Doesn't matter who sponsors it. Nobody cares what that is. Just get two riders on two different M1s and get a satellite team back out there, because this isn't going to change until you do. This is your future for the foreseeable if you continue doing what you're doing, Yamaha. That's just it.
Yeah, there are multiple problems with Yamaha, and Lynn Jarvis said to the broadcast a couple of races ago that he doesn't expect to have a satellite team next year, which is bad news. And also, they have this new engine and they have better straight line speed now, but apparently, the engine is taking away all the good characteristics of the Yamaha. So basically, the Yamaha always was a very, very easy to ride bike.
Yeah.
And with the new engine, that's taking this away, but it doesn't add too much to the bike, so it's good again. So Yamaha doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and they went back to the 2021 setting with Fabio, which is also a little bit problematic, I would say, because to go back 2 years is usually not the best sign. And with Frankie, I mean, you saw the interview he had with the MotoGP interviewer. I believe it was Jack Appleyard, if I'm not mistaken. And he basically asked him if he wants to secure a seat, or if results like this help him to secure a seat with Yamaha. And Frankie answered like, "Do I want to be with Yamaha?" And then Jack followed up, "Do you want to be?" And he was like, "Yeah, you have to ask Lynn Jarvis." So it was very cold blooded, and I loved it. But it doesn't sound like somebody who will be there next year, and it also sounds like somebody who has an offer for next year. So when we go back to Yamaha and developing the bike, what they usually won't do is give the rider all the new equipment who's leaving. So at the end, it's only Fabio. It looks like.
Yeah, and the Yamaha situation's very, very concerning, because I saw this exact same interview as well. I'm not sure if it was on Friday or Saturday. I think it was on Friday, but I could be wrong. And I saw this from Frankie, and look, Frankie's got a great sense of humor. He's a very funny guy. He always has been. But the sarcasm tells you everything. It really, really does. And it tells you the psyche of a rider who's very unhappy with what he currently has. And it's not just Fabio, it is Frankie as well. I mean, Frankie scored some brilliant results this year in the top 10. All right, other riders have crashed out, but you still got to finish first to finish first. Official motto of the Bad MotoGP podcast. But at the end of the day, you have to change something, or nobody is going to want to ride that bike. It is going to get to a point where there are riders who would rather stay in Moto 2 than move up to MotoGP on a Yamaha. I mean, we spoke about this with KTM at the beginning of this season, and they've been brilliant, to be fair. But we said there are riders who would rather stick it out in Moto 2 than go on to the KTM. And we're going to start speaking about Yamaha in that same vein, because that bike, they are just not getting anything out of it. And if Fabio walks and if Frankie walks, I don't see who else is going to want to ride it. I really don't. Fabio's only there because they've got him locked until 2024. Frankie, I think his contract runs out. Does it run out at the end of this season or
Yes,
2024 as well?
Frankie's is after this
So he's
season.
a free agent at the end of the season, and I don't see how there's any incentive for him to stay with Yamaha. So, I mean, the problems are only going to spiral and get bigger the longer this goes on, and I don't see how they fix them. I
Yeah.
don't. I don't see that they have the capacity to fix them.
Regarding Fabio, he made an Instagram post 3 days ago
Saw
where
this.
He said, I'm going to quote, Fabio Quartararo is taking his management in his own hands, then blah, blah, blah. And then by setting up his own management company, Fabio is taking from now on matters into his own hands. So this also doesn't look like somebody who's staying with Yamaha.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. It reads as someone who is prepared to walk at any point, realistically, because I know his manager's very well respected, and I know he's very well liked by Yamaha. But if Fabio's willing to self manage, basically, or have his best friend Tom maybe manage for him, then that tells me that that's a guy that's willing to walk at any
Yeah.
point. And Frankie, I mean, we've basically seen the same sentiment from both riders in different ways. We've seen Frankie's sarcasm, and we've seen Fabio's social media activity. Those two guys might be left with no riders at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if there is an option for Fabio to go out of Yamaha after the end of this season, I'm very sure he will explore this option. But it's most likely the same situation with Marc Marquez, that he is locked up until the end of 2024 and there's nothing to do about it. But yeah, I would like to discuss Marc Marquez, but the cat wants to go in, so I'll be back in a second.
Not a problem.
Okay, I'm back. Marc Marquez, because he went to the media a couple of days ago and told everybody how smart you have to be if you want to be world champion. You not only have to be fast, you also have to be smart. And goes on track and does the exact opposite. I mean, in the pre-season episode, I suggested that he might lead the world championship at a point, but this thing has gone out the window because he hasn't finished one race this season. He only finished sprints. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult situation with him because once again, he was in a good position. He tells the media that it's not possible to ride the Honda and it's not possible to finish the race. But yeah, I mean, a little bit more consistency would have been great. And I think if he would have accepted a fifth place and won in Austin and Termas, then we would be speaking a very, very different type of conversation here. But yeah, Marc Marquez binned again, and all the other Honda riders disappointed as well. I mean, Taka Nakagami was the only one who finished the race, and Joan Mir and Alex Rins didn't even start the race, so that's concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about Alex Marquez first, or sorry, not Alex, Marc Marquez. Apologies. Well, talk about Marc Marquez first, and then I'll move on to the rest of Honda. Just because you did as well. Marc Marquez is in a very weird spot here, and we've talked about this in a number of episodes about the position that Mark is in with his relationship with Honda, as well as where he might look to explore leaving Honda. And the problem is that it's a double-edged sword with Marc Marquez because that bike, really since 2013, has only been engineered for Marc Marquez to ride it because only Marc Marquez can ride the way he does. You know, Danny Pedrosa couldn't ride the Honda whenever Mark was his teammate. It nearly killed Jorge Lorenzo, quite literally. You know, Cal Crutchlow tried to ride it. He even struggled. He kept bending it as well. And so at some point, Polo Spargo had no success on it, and now it's tried to kill Joan Mir as well. When you're Marc Marquez, you kind of have to look at this in a very unique way. This whole situation, because on one hand, it's a situation of his making, because only he can ride the bike the way he wants to. But on the other hand, with Honda, Honda are in a real in between here because they've relied on Mark Marquez for so long that they haven't had to develop the bike around anybody else. They've basically been able to give Mark a bike with no front end, and he's been able to win world championships on it because only Mark Marquez can do Mark Marquez things. The problem with Honda is that since 2020, when Mark basically nearly killed himself in that crash in Jerez, Honda have finally realized that they have to start thinking about a life post Mark Marquez. But now they're in an in between where they don't know what to do. They don't know whether to develop the bike away from Mark Marquez so that other people can ride it, or if they go all in on Mark and pray that the future works itself out. And the problem is they can't decide what Honda is. They have no clear identity when it comes to the bike. It feels like it feels like they're desperately yearning for 2019 again, but they're not going to be able to get it because the grid's different. You know, Ducati are dominating, KTM are even on the rise, Aprilia are doing whatever Aprilia do, but Honda haven't moved forward in 4 straight years because they can't rely on the ace that they once did. That's the reality. And the problem as well with Mark Marquez, you made a brilliant point there, Leo, one that we've made before. His unwillingness to accept the fourth, the fifth, the sixth position means that he will either win it or he will bin it. And I mean, it's a very disturbing statistic. The fact that he has not finished one single full length race this season is a massive problem. Doesn't matter what manufacturer you are or what bike you ride, that is a problem. And Honda in this summer break that we're coming up to in a couple of weeks have got some very tough choices ahead of them because this can't continue. With Mark Marquez, it can't continue, and with Honda, it can't continue. So Honda are going to have some very, very difficult choices to make in pretty much all areas. Alex Rins is out for the season now. He suffered, from what I understand, a terrible leg break. Joan Mir's got a massive cut or a massive injury from that bike. And now, I mean, who are you left with? Taka Nakagami? Is that the best you can put out on the grid? I mean, look, I mean no disrespect to Taka Nakagami. Good rider, very solid, stable rider. But you got to be able to put out more than that. Nakagami is never going to challenge for race wins. He's not going to get you where you need to go. And Mark isn't capable of getting you where you need to go anymore. So people at Honda have got to start sitting down and being honest with themselves because they're on a road to nowhere.
I mean, with Mark, I mean, it's very, very likely that a week from now we will have this conversation about how great he was in Germany and how he put this shitbox of a Honda in P1 and won both the sprint and the rear race. And then everything will be fine again for at least a week until it's Assen again. So, yeah, with Mark, it's a little bit difficult because he is an 8 times world champion. He has earned every right to talk shit about Honda and lecture everybody on how to win a world championship. And nobody can say anything against this because he has the resume to. He basically has MotoGP fuck you money. He has fuck you
Yeah.
money, and he also has MotoGP terms fuck you money, where he can say whatever he wants, and everybody will say it's Mark Marquez. He gets away with it. And I mean, imagine somebody like Pecco saying you have to be consistent to win world championships and then bin it all the time. He would get roasted. But Mark Marquez is Mark Marquez. He can say these things, and he is right with, but he just doesn't do it. So it's difficult because on his day where he finishes a race, he is magnificent. What he does with this bike is incredible, and I mean, we basically said for a long time that Fabio is the best rider on the grid. This argument gets difficult now to make because A, his performance isn't there, but B, he also gets beaten by his teammate. With Mark, this narrative that he's the best rider on the grid also got more difficult since he isn't able to finish a race. I mean, yes, the Honda is a piece of shit, but still, it gets difficult when you have a rider like Pecco. And it looks like that Honda needs to do something for their rider safety, not only for Mark. Forget winning for a second. It's not sustainable if everybody who steps on your bike is in the hospital at least 3 times a year. So that's not necessarily what you want as a manufacturer. And they need to figure out to make the bike rideable again. Forget fast. Let's make it rideable first and then make it fast. And whatever is happening there, whatever is happening at Yamaha, it's not working. I mean, at least the Yamaha doesn't try to kill you.
Yeah, it's a massive problem with the Japanese manufacturers. I think what they have done, and this is just a guess from what I've seen, from what everybody's seen, and it's so uncharacteristic of the Japanese manufacturers. It's that they've gotten lazy and arrogant, and they just haven't bothered to try and keep up with the progress everybody else has been making. I mean, when Fabio won the title in 2021, you could see Ducati coming on strong towards the end, and they fell short at the finish line, but they were saying, okay, now we move, now we click up into gear. And the Japanese manufacturers just have not bothered to try and develop, and it's wildly concerning. And when it comes to Mark, especially, it's a huge problem because, like you said, there's one or two races in the calendar, Austin, Saxon Ring, wherever else, where it will be like we're watching 2019 again, and we're watching the best rider on planet Earth. And then every other race he'll look subpar because he's not willing to take a lesser finish, and the bike is trying to kill him at the same time, which obviously is far from helpful. But I think you're right. The approach needs to change from Honda. I mean, look, Yamaha have their issues. They have a lot of issues. But like you said, at least the M1 doesn't try to kill you. At least any rider can get on the M1 and ride it and not fear that they're going to be thrown over the fence and into the car park. The Honda is like a game of Buckaroo, and it's trying to throw you off at every possible turn because nobody knows how to ride it. What they have got to do is scrap that current RC21.3 and start again. They have to start again because what they have done since Mark's first major injury is they've tried to throw such a combination of things at that bike that now they're in a worse position than they've ever been, and they don't know how to untangle the knots that they've created for themselves. So in that situation, when you don't know what to do, you cut all the knots and you start again. That's what you have to do. Yamaha and Honda, ironically, are both in similar boats for very different reasons. They just have to start again because they've fallen such a way behind that it's almost unthinkable.
Yeah. One thing is that I don't remember when the last time was where Yamaha or Honda developed something and somebody else copied it. I mean, Honda developed like 12, 15 years ago the seamless gearbox, which was awesome. And then it kind of shifted into joke. It seamlessly shifted into an era where Ducati with Gigi Dall'Igna in 2014, I believe, um, started to make some moves. I mean, Yamaha and Honda were still at the top then, but they started to develop the bike in a way with the aerodynamics and the ride height devices and the different kinds of aerodynamics. You have the wings, you have the ground effect thing, and they go into a direction where it looks like Yamaha and Honda basically missed the train to go to this destination, and it's concerning because you have 2027 where the rule changes and apparently the wings will be decreased and the writer devices will get banned. So what do? Do you cancel your MotoGP project until 2027? Or do you get embarrassed every weekend again?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, this is the dilemma, and this is what people like Massimo Marigali are paid a lot of money, I would imagine, for. They're paid to be problem solvers and to figure this kind of thing out. And if you're one of the executives at Yamaha in Iwata, or you're an executive at Honda, you cannot be happy with what you're seeing. In fact, you have to be very unhappy with what you're seeing every weekend across Europe and Asia and America and wherever they end up being. But what they have to do is they've got to change the thought process. That's the problem. They're so stale in their way of thinking that they just haven't innovated. Ducati, especially Gigi Dall'Igna, who deserves a ton of credit, are very innovative, forward-thinking engineers. They're always looking to improve. They're always looking to see where can we get that extra mile per hour of speed? Where can we add this extra aero effect? Where can we get more downforce? Where can we turn better? Where can we lean better? Whereas Ducati and Honda have kind of just sat around admiring their work and they haven't bothered to improve in years. And it's a huge problem. And I mean, I don't know if you need to make sweeping changes in terms of personnel, in terms of who's running the ship, or if you just need to get to the people running it and shake them. But whatever happens, you have to change something because Ducati, both literally and metaphorically, are not going to slow down anytime soon. In fact, Ducati are probably already working on next year. KTM have done a brilliant job. They deserve props. They're working on next year as well. Again, Aprilia, I don't want to bring into because nobody knows what the hell Aprilia is doing. But the Japanese have got to change their mindset or they are going to stay at the back of the grid.
Yeah, and regarding KTM and next season, there's a very interesting scenario. And the big problem there is called Pedro Acosta, our Lord and Savior, who is going to free us from Pecco's reign of boredom and the fastest pizza delivery man in the history of pizzas. So he apparently has a contract with KTM where KTM has to decide until the 30th of June. I kind of got the wrong date in my meme there because I quoted from crash.net and apparently it's the 30th, I've been told. So KTM has until the end of the month to decide if they want to move Pedro Acosta to MotoGP, which brings a couple of problems. Who do you get rid of? Jack Miller is locked up until 2024, Brad Binder as well, and apparently Paul Espargaro as well. And Augusto Fernandez is the rookie, which is, again, from a PR perspective, very, very bad if you fire him again, since he's been doing a very good job as a rookie. KTM learned their lessons from last year with Remy and Raul and provided him with good material, and he's been doing a good job. And so what do? Do you fire a rookie and everybody hates you again? Do you fire Paul Espargaro, who is injured, who never got the chance to show you what he's capable of on the bike? And then there's this whole Husqvarna thing, which is a little bit unlikely because, as far as I'm concerned, Dorna is reserving this spot for a manufacturer who's willing to step in, whoever the fuck this might be, because BMW is not. And then they could move pieces with Husqvarna, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, unlikely. So what do they do?
I mean, it's a very interesting situation. This time of year nearly always is. But with Pedro Acosta, I mean, this is the multi-million-dollar question because Pedro is arguably the most talented youngster we've seen in a very long time. And I
Since Mark
include,
Marquez.
yet probably since Mark Marquez, I think that's a fair comparison to make. And the question is, what do you do with him? You know, I've read reports as well that I don't know if it's from today. I think it's from June 30th, like you said. From June 30th, other manufacturers are allowed to talk to Pedro if they're willing to offer him a MotoGP seat. And that adds an extra dynamic as well, because not only do you risk perhaps upsetting your best talent, but you now run the risk that your best talent might get poached by another manufacturer. I mean, Ducati have 8 bikes. They will make a spot available for him. Maybe Di Gian Antonio goes and they give Pedro to Grassini. I don't know. That's something that I'd have to think about a lot more. But if you're KTM, it's a tough decision. It is a tough decision. With Brad Binder, you've got arguably the best consistent rider on the grid. He'll always give you something from P6 to P8, which is brilliant to have. Jack Miller has impressed me so much this year. I think he's impressed you too, because I thought he would be a dud, and he's been brilliant. He's been challenging for race wins, so you can't get rid of him. Paul Espargaro had a horrendous crash, and you can't get rid of him because he hasn't had a chance to show you what he can do. And Augusto Fernandez has started to come good, and he's a rookie. Can you fire another rookie 2 years in a row? No, I don't think you can. So, I mean, if you're pit buyer, you've got a lot of decisions to make, and you best start making them quickly because with Pedro, you can't risk losing a once in a generation talent. So you're gonna have to find somewhere to put him. And to be honest with Pedro, even if you offer him a Tech 3 seat, if say Yamaha come along and say, Lord Pedro, we will give you a factory seat, I'm not saying I would make that choice, but the allure of a factory Yamaha might be more than a satellite KTM, is the point that I'm making. So if you're KTM, you've got a lot of things to balance out because if say, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate, if you're Yamaha and you go to Pedro Acosta and say, Pedro, money's not a problem, we'll give you whatever you want, come join us on the Monster Energy M1. Pedro will be able to make that bike his own, especially if Fabio leaves and if Frankie wants to leave too. Now, they're obviously shit at developing, so that's a different argument. But other manufacturers can offer other things as well. Ducati, best bike in the grid. Yamaha probably will be able to become the face of Yamaha. Not saying much, but nonetheless. So the point is, if you're KTM, you've got a lot of thinking to do because you've got, no matter what way you go, you've got a tough and very difficult to justify decision to make.
Yeah. I mean, Yamaha and Honda is very unlikely. I mean, I thought for a long time that Pedro might go to Repsol, but then I don't see why he would now. I thought Honda would be much better than they are right now. So if Honda would have at least shown improvement, that's maybe a move you could make. I think Ducati is the only option here because he has some loyalty to KTM. But if Ducati comes around, and the problem is KTM's preferred option is very well known. It's to leave Pedro in Moto2 for another year. And Pedro's preference is very well known as well. He wants to go to MotoGP, and rightfully so, because if he wins the championship, whatever happens next, he has nothing to prove in Moto2 anymore. And you risk injury or what the fuck could happen where you miss out on a MotoGP seat. And this comes with a lot of money. This comes with a lot of sponsorships. And if I was Pedro, I would go to MotoGP with Ducati because that's the safe bet here. And if KTM's preferred option indeed takes place, this would mean that Pedro is allowed to listen to other manufacturers and go to Yamaha. So if not Yamaha, I'm sorry, Ducati.
Mm-hmm.
And if Pedro stays or should stay in Moto 2 for next season, he will move to Ducati. If KTM decides to keep him in Moto 2, I believe he will move to Ducati. Ducati has a lot of room because they can move so much. And also, they've shown that they're clearly the best. And at the end of the day, you want to win. And with Pedro, you have the Red Bull sponsorship. And it's possible to get out of these contracts, but I don't see why he would drop Red Bull to go to Yamaha.
No, that's a good point as well. I mean, like, if the Yamaha was uber competitive, like, if this was 2021, we're maybe having a different
If
discussion
it
about
was
that.
2009, then we would have a different discussion.
Yeah, if it was 2008, 2009, we'd be having a very different discussion. But, I mean, was Pedro even born then? I mean, how
It
old
was,
was Pedro in 2009?
I believe he's born in 2004, so he was 5 back then.
So Lord Pedro was 5 years old when he would have had to move to Yamaha.
Yeah.
Good
So
grief.
we should adopt the AP and BP before Pedro and
Yes, the
Anno
Roman
Pedro.
Catholic Church make that
Yeah.
happen.
So
But
we
yeah,
are right. We are now at 19 AD, and yeah, I was born 6 BD. So yeah,
nice.
this is the new time we are referencing here. So if we are speaking of of 5 AP, then Pedro should go to Yamaha, but if not, then not. So I mean, it would be basically career suicide to go to Honda because he would
Yeah.
end up in a hospital again. And Yamaha is also a little bit of career suicide. I don't see what you want to do at Aprilia because Aprilia, they seem to be in a weird place where they have a good bike, but it's not good enough. So KTM and Ducati are the only options. KTM is in a very, very difficult situation because it feels like whatever they do, they make a huge mistake. And it's their job to figure out which mistake is the least severe. So, for example, dropping pole would be incredibly bad for PR. Everybody would hate you. Same with Augusto Fernandez. Everybody would hate you again. But then you secure Pedro. And if you give Pedro a little bit of time to develop and he wins 5 world championships with you, then it's kind of a good decision or a good trade off. If you let Pedro go and your PR machine is going well, and he wins 5 championships with Ducati, you're the stupid fuck who let him go. So, and if he's supposed to stay in Moto 2 and he goes to Ducati because of his contract, then you're the stupid fuck who let him go.
Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, KTM are in an unwinnable position because if you bin Augusto Fernandez to promote Pedro, you're an asshole for getting rid of a rookie and you haven't learned your lessons from Remy Gardner, who, in my opinion, should still be in the MotoGP fold, as we both know. If you get rid of Paul Espargaro, you're the asshole who got rid of an injured rider and didn't give him a chance to prove anything. If,
And Paul apparently has a contract for next year. We can't
yeah,
forget this. You have to somehow get rid of this contract, and this would only be in a gentleman's agreement if Paul retires. If he says, "Okay, I'm done with all the injuries, fuck this," then it's the best case scenario for KTM. But as far as I'm concerned, Paul doesn't want to retire.
yeah, and no, I mean, I still think Paul has a lot to give to the grid, so I don't see that he would ever do that. You'd probably have to buy his contract out, which would cost you about 10 million euros or something like that. Probably whatever his contract is with KTM.
Because
I mean,
where would he go?
yeah, and of course, it's the question of where would he go because I mean, the grid situation is a very confusing thing as it is. I mean, if you get rid of Brad Bender, you're an asshole because Bender's arguably your best rider. You can't get rid of him. And if you get rid of Jack Miller, you're the asshole who got rid of a rider that you brought in at the beginning of the season. So you can't do that either. Realistically, I think what's probably going to happen is that Ducati drop Fabio Di Gianantonio and they bring Pedro into Grassini, or maybe they drop Alex Marquez. I mean, I don't know if I see that happening as much because Alex has shown promise, but I think you will definitely see Pedro on a Ducati in 2024. I think, barring some kind of miracle from the gods with another manufacturer, I think there's only one route here, and I think it's Pedro on a Ducati.
I don't know who makes the interviews with the riders on the grid for World Superbike. But last weekend in Misano, Fabio Di Gianantonio was there, and this motherfucker of an interviewer went to him and asked him, "Do we see you on the grid in World Superbike next year?" And I was laughing so hard, and he was like, "No, I'm concentrating on MotoGP right now."
Oh,
And
fuck.
I mean, if the official broadcast interviewer asks you something like this, I mean, he wouldn't ask Pecco this. So,
So, Pecco, you going to World Superbike
yeah.
next year?
So, I guess Fabio Di Gianantonio's time may very well be over because Ducati has 7 good riders and him.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. So, apparently, Tony Arbolino is kind of linked to Ducati with the Gresini seat. This would make a lot of sense. And then we have the speculation of Jorge Martin going to Yamaha, which is still not confirmed, but it looks like Frankie won't be there. And Lynn Jarvis has been very open about wanting to sign somebody who is experienced in a MotoGP class. So no rookie, no Toprak, obviously, because he's going to BMW. He got sick of Yamaha too. So I think Jorge Martin might be a very, very realistic possibility there, even though I don't understand it from his perspective. Um, but yeah, then John Zarco could retire. He could get moved after this season, but I think John Zarco is very, very valuable for Ducati because he's testing all the stuff for Ducati. But yeah, I would move Pedro to Pramac if I was Ducati and move Marco Bezzecchi to Pramac if Jorge Martin is leaving. And Frankie would go to VR46 then, and Tony Abolino would go to Gresini. So you could have Marco Bezzecchi on a factory bike, which would be great, and Pedro on a factory bike, which would give you the opportunity, if anything happens with Pecco or Enea, that you could replace them with a equally good rider. And with Frankie, you have a very experienced rider who can test things for you. You just would have to give him a bike which is up to date to the 2024 standard then. And yeah, with Luca Marini, he's a good rider. He can do basically the same. But then you would have a very, very good lineup for the future.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many moving parts to Ducati that it's basically extracting the old and bringing in the new. And I think if you have a Ducati makeup that includes Pedro Acosta, Marco Bezzecchi, and all those young riders, I think that is a winning formula. I mean, Bezzecchi and the VR46 bike has been phenomenal. We've seen the other guys in the Pramac, even Luca Marini at VR46 has been brilliant. He's going to hold that down for the future. So really, it's just a matter of moving pieces. And even Tony Arbolino and a Grassini bike would be a very good move as well. I've been very impressed with Arbolino, and he's Italian, so it makes perfect sense that way as well. You have another Italian rider on an Italian bike, so yeah, I have no arguments with that.
Yeah. Also, you could do it vice versa. You could put Tony Abolino into Pramac and Pedro into Gresini. But if I was KTM, I would find a solution to keep Pedro. And if the solution is Husqvarna, then go to Dorna and convince them that you need 6 bikes on the grid. Because otherwise, I mean, this would be the best situation. And then you could sign Mark Marcus as well. So fuck it.
I mean, why not?
Yeah. But who would run this team? Would it be a full factory team with KTM guys, or would you do it in a partnership with Tech 3, for example, or like with Tech 3?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't really know what way you get around that.
It depends on how much money they're willing to pay.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's finances. Finances will always dictate what happens, but that's an interesting scenario for sure.
I mean, I think it wouldn't be bad for Pedro to stay in Moto 2 for another year because he's still very young. He's 19 years old. So it wouldn't be career suicide, let's put it this way. And he would be free at the end of next year to go wherever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think for Pedro's development, both in terms of maturity and in terms of physicality as well, I don't think it's a terrible option staying in Moto 2. He might win the title this year, and if he can win the title next year as well and have all that experience, and plus 2024 is still there as well. I mean, Ducati will still want him next year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that can make a lot of sense.
What if KTM brings up Darren Binder with
Oh,
Husqvarna?
Jesus Christ. Dive bomb Darren, dive bombs Pedro to steal the Ducati seat.
Yeah, he will secure a world championship for Pedro again. Put those two in a team and then wipe out everybody else, and Pedro can, yeah, can win every race.
Oh god, that would just be the ultimate storyline.
Yeah, and with Tony Abolino, I mean, he is a very, very sneaky good rider in a way.
Yeah.
He's not flashy. It's not like he's making jaw-dropping moves, but for some reason he can qualify in P10 and he's still second or wins the race. So it's absolutely incredible. I don't know how he does it, but the consistency he has, the ability to win in the rain, it's incredible. And I could see him definitely being a very, very formidable opponent for Pedro for the title.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with Tony Arbolino, he's kind of everything you want in a rider. He's quiet, he goes under the radar, but he can basically do everything. He can race in the rain, he can race in the dry, he can basically compete at every track, which is a rarity. He's always uber competitive at every track they go to. And he's likable as well. People kind of forget that likability can be a big thing for a manufacturer. So I think with Tony Arbolino, no matter where he goes, he's going to be an excellent addition to whatever manufacturer he goes to. I think he could be a very good option for Ducati.
Yeah. And I would like to talk about the pizza celebration because it was hilarious. I was like asking myself, what's in the bag? What's in the bag? And then he pulls out the pizza, and we have memes for a whole week now.
I mean, just that Pedro Rossi. I'm just saying. I'm just
Yeah,
saying. And no, I thought it was brilliant. I mean, I love Pedro, and I love that he's able to showcase his personality like that. I mean, it was great. It was really really good
yeah.
fun. I mean, Pizza Pedro. I mean, just
Everybody loves him.
nobody doesn't like him. Nobody does not like Pedro Acosta, and this is why.
Yeah. And I would like to hear your opinion on the Sam Lowe's and Alonso Lopez crash.
Yeah, sure. Liam, listen, I just got to go 1 second. I'll be right back if that's okay. I just got to
Yeah,
get a thing
sure.
here. Bear with.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we're back.
Yes, we are back, and we are back with Sam Lowe's and Alonso Lopez, and it nearly kicked off. I'm just saying, it very, very nearly kicked off on the side of the track and in the paddock. It was a very, very intense incident, and I gotta say, I think Alonso Lopez is in the wrong here. I mean, I don't see any vindication for him. And the fact that he put out that statement on Instagram was bizarre, quite frankly. I mean, what did you think of it?
I mean, first of all, Alonso Lopez is an absolute fucking idiot for messing up the long lap. I mean, this was stupid because without this long lap penalty, he still would have been able to achieve a very good result. But regarding the incident where I mean, it's a very difficult place to overtake. I mean, he was coming out of the two Arabiatas, and then there's this chicane, and in the second part of the chicane, he said put his bike next to Sam Lowe's, and they collided, and Sam Lowe's crashed. So yeah, it's clearly his fault that Sam Lowe's crashed, and I don't think that this is something which is necessary in the first two laps or whatsoever, or first lap even. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he is in the right in this way that he went for a gap, but I think the long lap penalty was okay. It was it was harsher than it actually was because he fucked it up, so he had to do a double long lap, and which is also bizarre that you penalize somebody with a long lap. Then he fucks up the long lap, and instead of 3 seconds, he loses 6 seconds, and then you penalize him again.
Let's see.
So it's almost like he got a triple long lap from a penalty second perspective. But yeah, I think Alonso Lopez got too aggressive there, and I understand that he saw a gap and went for it. But I have the opinion that it's your responsibility to make overtakes safely. And I don't know, I can't judge how quickly Sam Lowe should have noticed him and if Sam Lowe should have opened up a little bit. I don't feel qualified to judge this. So, and it's always difficult to put the blame on somebody who crashed in this incident. So, yeah, I think that Alonso Lopez is at fault, and I think the long lap is deserved, and it's more his stupidity of fucking up the long lap, which is maybe frustrating him a little bit more. But let's pretend he didn't have the long lap and he would have finished third, then the world would be in a better place for him right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to be one dumb son of a bitch to mess up a long lap penalty like that. I mean, the only good thing that Sam Lowe's can be happy about with this is that Alonso's own stupidity punished him enough. And the fact he got another long lap for messing up the original one. I mean, as for the crash itself, I think what we saw in that moment was Alonso's inexperience. I mean, he's still a very, very young kid, even though he's a phenomenal rider. And I think we forget how young he is, that he's still going to make occasionally rash moves. And I think that's what you saw at the weekend. I don't think there was any ill intent. I don't think he meant to knock Sam Lowe's race out. I just think it was a dumb, stupid move that he just overcooked a little too much. Sam Lowe's doesn't see that he's coming, and Sam Lowe's race is lost because of it. I thought the long lap was obviously fair because he forced another rider to crash. The fact that he ballsed up the long lap was more punishment that'll remind him never to do it again. But yeah, I think my biggest issue with the whole thing wasn't the incident itself, but the bizarre way he tried to defend it. Obviously after the race, I think if he'd have just let it go and said, "Look, messed it up, it happened, we move on," nobody would be talking about it and people would have forgotten about it already. But trying to defend yourself and claiming that you had nothing to do with it at all is just stupid, because we can all see the race in front of ourselves. We saw that you slammed the door in Sam Lowe's way too late. He tried to cut back in, couldn't do it, and ended up crashing out because of it. Just accept it and move on, okay? It's not the worst crash I've ever seen. It's not the worst forced crash I've seen this season. Just move on from it, all right, Alonso? Because you're a great rider. You don't have to do something like that. Just learn from it and move on for the next race.
Yeah, I feel like he's a little bit of a hothead, which
Very much so. Very much so.
which showed last year in Valencia, where he was battling with Pedro for the Rookie of the Year title, and he was all over the place. And it looked like he lost his head a little bit again on Sunday. And he's an incredible rider. I love him. He's so great. He is everything you want in a rider except a little hot-headed. So if he can get this under control, he has a very bright future. And I think MotoGP would suit him even better than Moto2 because he's very tall, he's kind of heavy, and I think that MotoGP will be better for him, and I think that he will have a good future. And also, this aggressiveness he has put him on the top step of the podium a couple of times. It provided for incredible action. So I don't really fault him for going for this gap, but it didn't work out. So take the penalty, and please, Alonso, next time take it correctly and make wonderful things again like you did in Australia, because this shit was epic. And I mean, he punted he punted Celestino Vietti off in free practice, and we got a disappointed Vale meme. So everything was great there. And then he had this incredible race in Australia where he won despite the long lap, which got more memes. So yeah, everything is fine now. Um, but yeah, I think he is right in the sense to go for this gap, but he just have to make sure that it works out, and he maybe should have executed a little bit better there, or not force it. So it's just, I think it's just a mistake. It's nothing where he should get hate for, but accept the penalty and move on because you can't change it anyways.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, he's every right to go for the gap. I have no problem with that. It's just the execution that he messed up pretty badly, in my opinion. And as for everything else, like, I like aggression when it comes to riders. I think aggression is a very important ingredient in being very good at what you do. But what Alonso has to do is learn to control it and contain it in the right way and to release it in a controlled way on track. You know, you don't want to be so hot headed that you let it get to you and affect your race. Like, again, talking about the sort of fabled and hushed 2015 when Valentino may or may not have kicked Marc Marquez off the track in Sepang. You know, that's an example of letting the race get to you, and you can't do that. You've got to be able to be composed enough that you can race your race and know that you'll be better than the other person. And like I said, Alonso Lopez is young. He's going to learn, he's going to get better from this. It's just an example of where he was too stupid on the day and it cost him. But at the end of the day, he punished himself by doing the long lap wrong as well. He managed to balls that up as well. But he'll get better from it, you know, because like you said, he's a phenomenal rider. He really is a phenomenal rider.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit like everybody was riding for Pedro that day. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Alonso kicked out Sam Lowe's, and then he had the long lap. So basically, everything behind Pedro, what could have been danger to him, eliminated itself, or Alonso Lopez eliminated this danger. So, and it's funny that 2 years in a row we get Pedro taking revenge for fucking up in Le Mans, because in Le Mans he crashed the last 3 times. He never not crashed in a race in Le Mans. And yeah, in Mugello now he won for the second time in a row, and incredible fashion. So yeah, kind of funny that it worked out this way. And also they were kind of working in favor of Tony Arbolino, because Tony Arbolino was the one who benefited the most from Alonso Lopez and Sam Lawson,
That's true. That is
even more
very,
than
very true.
Pedro, because arguably Pedro would still win the race, because over the race distance, I feel like he was too strong. But Tony Arbolino against Alonso Lopez or against Sam Lowes, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's what I like about Tony Arbolino. We talked about him a minute ago in relation to MotoGP. With Tony Arbolino, you see what Alonso Lopez could be. I think in terms of the psychological maturity. With Tony Arbolino, you see a guy who's always ready to take advantage of what's going on around him. He's cool and he always rides his race. If Alonso Lopez can get to that level, he will become an even better rider than he already is, because what you see with Tony Arbolino is that he doesn't get into these fights. He doesn't shut the door on anybody that they crash, and he just is cool and composed. And if Alonso Lopez does that, then the sky really is the limit for him.
yeah. Fun fact about Sam Lowes: the last 3 times in Mugello he crashed, and 2 times of the 3 times he was taken out by another rider. Last year with Tony, and this year with Alonso. And in 2021 he crashed chasing down Raul Fernandez. So yeah, it's 3 times in a row, and I can't remember Sam Low's previous races in Mugello. So not his best track.
So Sam Lowe's hates Italy, is basically what you're saying.
Yes,
Fair.
probably.
He's not having a good time.
Or Italy hates Sam Lowe's.
Hmm. Fair point.
I would like to talk to you about Moto 3 because it was a unusual Moto 3 race in this way that we didn't get a 20 rider battle for the victory in Mugello, but it was a very usual Moto 3 race in this sense that Dennis Öncü just can't win. And I
Oh,
mean, he was clearly the best rider on track. He was gapping them in the infield. And all they did was being 3/10 of a second slower over a lap and then closing the gap back in the slipstream. And he even had like a half a second gap once and was third after the straight. I mean, what more do you want to do? But it still was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, it was hilarious. It was one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen. I mean, Dennis Onchu is just a weird case, to be honest. He really, really is. You know, if he's not causing havoc to other people on track, then havoc is happening to him. And like you said, he was clear, far and away, the best rider on the grid by a mile. He was so much better than everybody else. Like you said, he was like 3/10 of a second quicker around all the track except the straight when everybody got the slipstream on him. And I gotta admit, even though I, for whatever reason, I still don't know why, even though I picked him for the title this year, it was so funny when he got pipped at the line because I know how upset I would have been if that was me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he finished all practice sessions on top, qualified on pole, so like Max Verstappen things. But then, in true Dennis Öncü fashion, he finished second and was waving at everybody on the track, trying to communicate where everybody knew what he was doing, like, leave him alone, okay, and he will be gone. So it was in their best interest to not leave him alone. And he was very, very spectacular, but still couldn't win. I mean, it was hilarious.
No, it was fantastic. I really really enjoyed it. I have to say, because I saw that race and I saw the finish, and I thought to myself, this is the most Dennis Onchu thing I think that will ever happen ever. You know, dominates every practice session, dominates qualifying, qualifies on pole, and then gets with 2 meters left of the race, gets pipped to the finish. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was quality.
I mean, Danny Olgado must find himself so funny for doing this.
Oh god, yeah.
Imagine you're Danny Olgado and you just know he is so much better. He's so much faster, and you're honestly like, gotcha.
Oh no. I would it would have been so funny to talk to Danny Holgado after that race because he knows he was nowhere near as
Yeah.
good, and I literally saw him coming up behind him, and I thought he's not going to do this, is he? He's not going to beat Dennis Onchu to the line, and Dennis Onchu, you can see in his face, he thought he had it won, and then he just see Danny Holgado going past.
He posted this picture on Instagram. It was 2 days ago where he was posing with his whole team and his sister, and he has this very, very evil looking stare, like somebody who knows he's about to ruin Dennis Entry's next week.
Oh man.
And I envision him looking down the straight in exactly this point of view. So check it out on Instagram. It's on Daniel Gado's Instagram, and it's the picture with his team. You will know what I'm talking about. And also, I think that David Alonso did a very, very good job because David
Yes, he did.
Alonso is somehow super quiet. He lets everybody do what they got to do. And then in the last 2 laps, he's there and he's contesting for the victory. And it didn't work out, obviously, but he is incredible when you consider he's just a rookie. I mean, he has his first season.
That's the
Yes.
face of a man coming to fuck up your weekend.
Yes. This is exactly the face I'm talking about.
He's goaded for that.
He
I
just
respect
knows.
that.
He just knows. Um, yeah, but David Alonso, he's just a rookie. It's like his sixth or seventh race when you consider his wildcard starts. Um, he doesn't have more than 10 races in Moto 3. I don't know how many wildcard starts he has. I remember one in Misano in 2021 where he was nowhere and he improved a lot. And I'm very excited to see where it's going with him because he's showing a very, very promising future.
Yeah, I was very impressed with David Alonso. I think he had a great race. I thought he hung in there very well. And to be honest, when I look at David Alonso, I see him as like the Alonso Lopez of Moto 3. I think, he didn't really get like a proper traditional chance at the class, but he's come in and he's really taken it by storm. He's come in, he's had some great finishes, he's done some great races, and I think his future is very, very bright. I think he's a great young rider, and I think he's just such a great, talented addition to the grid. And I think he will always keep himself in that mix of around P5, P6 by the last couple of laps. And he'll always be a rider that can sneak a podium or a win because of that. So, yeah, I'm very happy with David Alonso.
I mean, he got the most traditional way into Moto 3 you could have. I mean, he was with Aspa in the junior category and then moved to Moto 3 with Aspa. So everything fine for him. But yeah, I mean, Diogo Moreira kind of fucked up this last 2 weekends. So this championship is kind of going down the drain. Jaume Masia was somehow good again, which is always surprising, but good. I mean, sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. Whatever he likes.
Yeah, captain inconsistency, Jaume Masia. Yeah, again, somehow had a good weekend, had a good result. Kind of just there really. Had a good weekend though, and gotta say he finished well, so credit to him. Ayumu Sasaki had a good weekend. Think he deserves some credit too. He got P3, I think.
Yeah, he almost overtook entry. I mean, if the start
Oh
finish
god, if
line
he did a, if
would would have been like 10 meters further down the straight, he would have had P2.
Oh, see if he'd have overtaken Oncho, I'd have lost my mind laughing.
Imagine if everybody would have overtaken him in the last lap. Like he was leading into onto the finish straight and he ended up P5.
Oh, that'd have been sensational.
Yeah. But it feels weird that we don't go to Catalonia. I don't know what they did there, but it feels a little bit weird. Catalonia is supposed to be the next race, so yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
what's
I
up.
don't know why they're doing that. It feels very, very weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, but I think they should have less races in Spain, anyways, because Mugello is a track which is suited for the MotoGP bikes. Mugello is a big track with I feel like, with enough space, but a track like Jerez or even Portimao, I mean, those tracks are not necessarily safe for MotoGP, where it feels like MotoGP is too fast for it. And I think Catalonia is a perfect track because it's a big track. It's a Formula One track, so you can go fast there. A little bit like Silverstone, like Austria, like Sepang. Those are like the big tracks, and then you have Le Mans, you have Jerez, and you have Valencia, where MotoGP just doesn't make too much sense in where they are right now because they're just too fast for it. So I think even though I like Jerez a lot and I like Valencia a lot of people hate Valencia, but I like it because it was a very, very good experience being there live in 2021. I think they should get rid of it because MotoGP is just getting too fast for those tracks.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting discussion, and it's one I'd love to have maybe during the summer break about tracks we'd change, rules we would change. I mean, guys, if that's something you want to see, we'll definitely do that because I think that would be a great discussion. Yeah, and I think it's actually funny because I think didn't you talk about this with Maddie when she was on the podcast?
Yeah.
And we talked about tracks that the bikes are actually evolving faster and faster than the technology can keep up with. So eventually we will see these bikes outpacing the tracks that they're on. To be
They are
honest,
already.
yeah, they literally are already. You're absolutely right. To be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Valencia. I just don't like the layout, but that's just my opinion. I know it's a big part of the calendar and all that, so that's fair enough. Jerez is kind of another one that I'm sort of icky about, but I love the addition of Portimao. I really, really like it. I think it's the fact that you've got that beautiful big hill and then it sweeps in through the chicane and background again. I think that's a nice touch, but I would like to see some new tracks being added and not ones that are in the country of Borat or run by Ezpeleta's family. Let's have some legitimate tracks added to the calendar. And I actually think you would grow MotoGP really well that way as well. Like a Brazilian Grand Prix again would be fantastic.
Yeah, but where would you do this? There's not the infrastructure there to do this because you can't race at Interlagos. It's too dangerous there.
And Sao
There's,
Paulo's
it's,
not big enough either.
I mean, I don't know where you could race. That's like the problem with MotoGP. You can't even. It would be so nice if MotoGP raced in Spa, but you can't do this.
Yeah,
I mean, imagine you have a crash at the wrong point in Eau Rouge. There's not enough. There's not enough gravel or runoff space ever going to be for all the bikes flying there. Even with the cars, it's too dangerous. But
yeah.
they're doing it because of tradition. And yeah, I think the Sachsenring, I don't like it at all. I never liked it because the layout is just boring as fuck.
I like it only because I'm left-handed. That's it's lefty representation. That's the only reason I
But then
like the
again,
Saxon ring.
Germany has no good racetracks. They are all shit. And the Nürburgring GP circuit is, in my opinion, it's not catastrophic, but it's shit.
Yeah,
It's not as good as Mugello, for example. Um, Then Hockenheim is a piece of shit as well. You can't race there with motorcycles either. So it's like the best thing we have, but it's still shitty.
yeah. I mean, it's a good point, because we have all these different tracks that have been proposed, like Finland and Kazakhstan and even India. I mean, what the hell's happened to that? I haven't heard anything since the beginning of the season.
Are ticket sales available for India? Because for a long time, ticket sales haven't been available for India.
That's a
And
really good point. I don't
whole
know.
speculation about India not being able to. I will check on the MotoGP site.
Yeah, but the discussion about tracks and technology is really fascinating because I think even with F1, for example, there's discussions about whether they keep Monaco as part of the calendar because it's a street circuit and it's starting to get too small for how fast the cars are.
Yeah, tickets for this event are currently not available.
Oh, well, there's a
So
shock.
Indian GP tickets are still not available.
Isn't it only
And
something like 6 weeks until it's meant to be the Indian Grand Prix?
now it's on the 21st of September.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, it's the whole summer then. But even so, the fact they're not available is a concern.
It's right before Japan, Indonesia. But let's check Australia, for example, if you can buy tickets for Australia. Yes, you can. You can already buy your Australia tickets.
God,
And
I would.
it's just 60 euros for the Sunday and 115 euros for the 3 days.
Is that
So
for Australia?
yeah, but the flight to
God,
Australia is too expensive. So
God, I would love to go to Phillip Island.
yeah,
That's the one track out of all of them I would love to go to Phillip Island. I think it's the most beautiful racetrack, arguably on the calendar. Naturally, that and
yeah,
Mugello.
I'm looking for universities at the moment where I can make my master's degree. And there's one university in Munich, and it offers like a double master's program where you can add one semester after your master degrees in
Hmm.
Australia and
Oh,
then get a double degree. I don't have looked into it how exactly it works, but it sounds really cool. And I thought about I want to do this. So yeah, maybe I'll be in Australia at some point. I would love to.
I tell you what would actually be a really nice race, but again, I don't know if the infrastructure would work. A Canadian Grand Prix would be nice.
Yeah, but then again, where you can't race at Villeneuve,
Yeah.
it's not possible. And I don't know if Canada has any other tracks.
Uh, no, it probably
Probably,
doesn't.
those animals who invade the track in Australia. Then you have in Canada some kind of grizzly bear and a moose.
Some 600-pound bear wipes Mark Marquez out.
Oh my god, I recently discovered how big these fuckheads are. They grizzlies get up to 1 meter and 60 in shoulder height. So when they're on four legs and weigh like 800 kilos, that's as big as a horse and
Yeah, it's bigger than a
heavier than a
horse.
horse. I mean, the height is basically the same as a smaller horse. There are bigger horses, there are smaller horses, but a smaller horse is like 160 is legit. And those horses don't weigh 800 kilos. So, I mean, those things are fucking massive. And the moose is even bigger. A moose is
Yeah.
even bigger. Imagine you ride against like 800 kilos or a ton of animal with your motorcycle. And remember how Andrea Iannone how
Yeah,
he
but at the
killed the
seagull.
he killed the seagull, and how the seagull was just dead instantly. Like it would be vice versa, where the rider just falls over dead, and the moose doesn't even bother. It's like, oh.
So that just happened. The
Yeah,
moose stands like Marquez.
yeah, we can't. The fuck are you doing? Yeah, we can't go to Canada. I mean, I would like to have a little bit more races over the globe. Like, for example, South Africa would be great.
That
I
would be
think
great.
that Brazil or Mexico would be great. And also, I believe that the USA is big enough to host two races. But we are running very quickly into the problematic that we don't have enough tracks in the world which can host a MotoGP race. Like, with Formula One, it's easy. You just go into a city and put some barriers up there, and then all of a sudden you have an A-graded FIA track. But with the FIM, it's not as easy because motorcycles, even Portimao is like a very, very nice track, but it's still too dangerous for MotoGP.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point to make. But with the US, with the right investment, which is the problem, it's investment from the very top that's the big problem. And I know there's a lot of fans of the page and the podcast who are from the US who would love to have more races, and I'd love the US to have more races because the bike community in America is so strong. And I mean, look, again, there's no point in talking about Laguna Seca. That's not going to happen because it's way, way, way too evolved beyond Laguna Seca. But look at the size of the US. Like how imagine if you had another race in California, a race in the East Coast, which is easy to get to from Europe. It's like a 7, 8 hour flight. It's not that bad. You could have a race. I'm trying to think. You have the race in Texas now, which is okay, and then you could work another one in. The US is big enough to host it.
Of course, but have you ever watched Moto America?
Yes, I have. It's
Those tracks
carnage.
are fucking garbage. Those if you could rate if you rate tracks like an FIA or FIM A grade, B grade, those tracks in America would be a Y grade. They
Yeah,
are
they are
so
bad.
incredibly bad and not safe enough for MotoGP. I mean, it's a wonder that they even race those superbikes on there because it's outrageously bad how bad in the condition those tracks are compared to European tracks. I mean, you could go to Monza. It's not even a motorcycle track, and it's better for motorcycle racing than
Yeah.
those American tracks. And this is like the big problem. We can't go to Suzuka. We can't go to any other place more or less than we are right now because we are so limited on the safety, which is obviously necessary. But then again, who pays for this shit?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality. Who pays for it? Who wants to host it? And I mean, like, even on this side of Europe, you already have Silverstone in England for MotoGP. I mean, the rest of the UK, there's no way they can host it.
You can't
Ireland,
go to Donington.
yeah, you can't go to Donington because it's too small. I mean, Ireland doesn't
I
have.
love man.
Yeah, let's bring back the Isle of Man TT from the 1970s, because
But
that'll work.
then but then I would like to have a race at the Nordschleife in at the
Yeah,
Nürburgring. Then I would like to see this. If we can have the Isle of Man that I want to have this, then there's no
I
exception.
get the Isle of Man, you get the Nordschleife.
And let's put Macau back in. So
Yeah, why not? Might as
yeah.
well just throw it in there while we're doing this.
Regarding America, like the only hope we have is they are building another track for F1 and not those stupid street circuits, and then MotoGP can race there.
Yeah, the problem is they're building the Vegas street circuit, so that's out the
Yeah,
window as
that's out
well.
the window. But like, if they build another one, let's hope.
True. I mean,
Fingers
like a
crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, look, I mean, the problem is with America is that if they don't invest in Moto America, they're never going to invest in MotoGP because they would start from the bottom and go up. They would never go from the top down, and that from the states for the fans perspective it would be great because it's easy enough to get to relatively. It doesn't take all that long to fly to the states. The weather, you get great weather depending on where you're at. The money would be there to keep the track going and to keep it in brilliant condition, and I think the fans would turn up. I really, really do. But the problem is there's no willingness from anybody to do it, and that is the problem that we face. And we can't keep adding tracks in Europe because Spain already makes it most of the calendar. Italy's there, Germany's already there with the Saxon Ring. I mean, I don't know. I really don't.
Yep.
Bring back Brno.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I would trade the Sachsenring for Brno in an instant.
I would actually, to be fair. Yeah, I love the Czech Grand Prix.
But yeah, then we have the money issue again. But yeah, I would like to end this thing. We will discuss the Marc Marquez victory in Germany a couple of days from now. So yeah, hopefully Pedro can win in Germany again. So yeah, then everything will be back to normal when Marc Marquez wins again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to who finishes in P2.
Yeah, absolutely. The battle for P2 in Germany, that's what we're looking forward to. Marc Marquez with one arm wins in Germany.
I mean, he won in 2021 with the fucked up arm. He has to win now. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know how the odds are. I would actually bet on Marc Marquez win there. If the odds are bad because he is so astonishingly inconsistent at the moment,
Yeah. Yeah, the odds have got to be there, surely. They've got to be up there somewhere.
yeah, maybe I'm buying myself a Ferrari after this.
He bets all his life savings on Marquez to win in Germany.
And if he doesn't, my mom and I have to move out. I mean, I have my flat with my girlfriend, so I wouldn't have to be homeless, but my mom would have to be homeless.
Oh,
So
Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
I'm sorry, mom.
It went wrong. It went badly wrong.
Yeah, actually, I'm visiting her at the moment. She's away on a business trip, and I have to watch the cat and watch the house. So yeah, I'm here. But hopefully, we can keep this house after next weekend, and it doesn't go to the bank.
His crippling gambling addiction in MotoGP. That's why we keep the page going.
I once gambled on MotoGP. It was in Valencia 2017, and there was a very, very good line, um, which was the teammate battle between Jorge Lorenzo and Andrea Dovizioso back then. And I was certain that Andrea Dovizioso will finish in front of Jorge Lorenzo because of team orders, because of the championship. I thought he has to. It's very, very likely that he will. And then Jorge Lorenzo crashes. And I was like, yes, yes. And like the KSI meme. And then in the same fucking lap, Andrea Dovizioso crashed. I was like, no, no. This dumbass just had to finish the race and I would be 10 euros richer now. But this
he
fuckhead
don't
had to crash.
he don't Bitcoin.
I should have bought Bitcoin like 10 years ago and then I would buy MotoGP and make a race in Canada.
The BadMotoGP team.
The Bear GP.
Yeah, we sign Pedro.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to you in a couple of days and yeah, hopefully we'll have something to discuss about.
Absolutely. Pleasure as always, Leo. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you in Germany.
Goodbye.